Hey, what's up? So today I'm gonna make a video update on my Yawgmoth Thran Precision EDH deck. So made tried some cards out, put some cards in, stuff like that, and with the new set of commanders, Boulder's Gate, added one or two new cards to the deck, and yeah, I'll kind of go ahead and then kind of um, talk about some of the minor changes and overall how I've been doing with deck and stuff. So I namely play with my group of friends. They all play pretty mostly I would say pretty good commanders and stuff like that. So our play groups um, we have pretty finely tuned deck. They're not quite on the level of CDH, but we do have you know interactions and we do have some big spells to cast and stuff like that. So sometimes the games can end pretty quickly. Sometimes the games can take a while. But so I built the deck to kind of reflect that. So it's not a fully CDH deck, but it is tuned, I guess, and there are some expensive cards in the deck and stuff like that. But you could probably take this deck to the CDH deck or CDH table and maybe do well and okay with it. Um, but more or less, if you were gonna rate this deck on a scale of like 1 to 10, 10 being like competitive, super CDH, I'd probably rate this around between a 7 and 8, I guess, or maybe a 6 and 8, depending how you look at it. But yeah, so the deck is the reason I rate that because it's got a lot of ramp. It's low to the ground, and it tries to establish a board as quickly as possible. Now, there are a few things that you probably wouldn't play in CDH in the deck, but I think overall, um, it's strong enough to hold its own, if anything. So, um, while, like I mentioned, I as a player don't particularly like too much like quote like interaction, so I don't really have too many instant speed spells in the deck. Most of my interactions are ability based and stuff like that, and so yeah, as I go through the deck, you'll see that there's not too much sorcery or instant spells that are in the deck to interact with my opponent. It's just all stuff that kind of triggers and does that sort of stuff. So um, it is a aristocrat deck for sure. Just the nature of how Yawgmoth works. So the idea is you're gonna be trying to deal damage through pinging your opponent, and maybe there's several ways to go essentially infinite with the deck, or if you're gonna do control, you can essentially control the board. But this deck really lacks power in the sense that it doesn't have many big creatures. Most of the creatures are really small. They go really wide, and maybe you can like overwhelm one opponent, but you're no way are able going. You're not able to go ahead and kill someone off with like a big creature. You're just gonna be pinging, one damage here, one damage there, yourself and your opponent. So yeah. All right. So I'm gonna just go ahead and going through it. So this is just Yawgmoth. Not much to say about him. He's the commander of the deck. I'm gonna start off. I guess I have the planeswalkers here first. So I'm playing 4 planeswalkers. These are the ones I found that I like. Through test playing and stuff like that. Um, you have Karn, the creator here, I believe, and what he's good for is he's good for essentially hosing your opponent's mana rocks, their artifacts and stuff like that. And he's a way to kind of kill artifacts too. So if your opponent's playing like a Grab Digger's Cage or something like that, you can make it a creature and kill it off with like a Yawgmoth by minusing it. So that's his thing. You can also kill some like I guess you can kill like mana crypts. You can kill or so not mana yeah mana crypts. You can kill other 0 CMC artifacts like treasure tokens, stuff like that. The minus ability you almost never use because you don't have a sideboard. If your artifacts did get exiled, then you might be able to recover one of them. But for the most part, you're just gonna always be upticking this guy, and his passive ability is just gonna hose your opponent, and so he's just basically like a floodgate there. Liliana Dark Realms. She's honestly here. Oops, kind of knocked my stuff over. She's honestly here for just to ult her. She's really easy to ult. I think you just need one. You need her out on the board for like 1 or 2 turns. If you have her and Yawgmoth and like a creature or two on board, you can easily ult her. And I guess she does fetch you, a card advantage through swamps if she does stick on the board. But once you ult her, you're gonna have so much mana, and you're gonna be drawing a lot of cards with Yawgmoth, so you'll be able to kind of just cast whatever you want, do whatever you need to do. Yeah, this guy is so good. Basically, he just keeps making a ton of tokens for you. Like you make so much tokens unless your opponent is like swinging their whole board at you. They're rarely ever gonna attack you just because he makes so much tokens. Almost no one wants to attack you because it's kind of worthless. Because you can just block with it and then just minus off the token with Yawgmoth. He also generates you advantage with his other +1 ability. So both his abilities are good. His ultimate, you rarely get to do, but if you do get his ultimate off, it's pretty funny. Yeah, and so I think he's a pretty good Planeswalker, even though he's a little expensive at 5 mana. If you have enough ramp and stuff, you can get this guy out on like turn 2 or 3 even. So yeah, pretty funny Planeswalker. And then Liliana the Dreadhorde, she's alright. She's mainly here for her passive, which is gonna allow you to draw a bunch of cards. When stuff dies, she can be removal. She can also, create you bodies for Yawgmoth. So she's got all of her abilities are pretty useful. She is pretty expensive at 6 mana, but I mean, once you get this stabilized with her, you're in a pretty good spot. You almost never get to ult with her. If you do have Yawgmoth and the ability to proliferate a bunch, you might be able to ult with her. But for the most part, I think she's more like removal and draw off of her. Alright, let's move on to, I think, the creatures next. So this is a very very heavy creature deck, because, just because of Yawgmoth, you need a lot of creatures to make this deck work. So, first creature I'm trying out here, or added to the deck, was Death Greeter. Greeter? So, his ability is just when something dies, you gain a life. Now, that doesn't sound much, but for this particular deck, it means a lot because you're going to be sacrificing a bunch of stuff, and sometimes you just need that life gain or to make that sacrifice a free sacrifice, because allowing yourself to go with free sacrifices, there's a bunch of ways to go infinite if you're not paying life. Like if you're sacrificing like a token and creating another token, sacrificing that token, creating another token, so on and so forth. You can really drain yourself of your health, and so just having a 1 mana heal yourself for 1, it's honestly not a bad thing, and it helps you keep you in the game if you're killing your opponent's stuff too. So, yeah, not bad. And I mean, worst comes to worst, he's a free draw with Yawgmoth. You play him for 1 mana, you draw 1 card, you don't lose life. So, not the worst thing there. Karen Feeder for the Gravecaller combo. This sometimes does come up. You bring back Gravecaller, sack it off for Carrion, and if you have like a lot of mana, or you have like a Phyrexian Altar, you can just kind of go infinite with that. So yeah, Carrion Feeder is just another sack outlet, and he happens to have the zombie keyword in it, so and he's cheap, 1 mana. So yeah, that's why you got these two in here for that. Blood Gas for extra value off of your lands, because he's got landfall. I like him. I mean, this deck can't make too much use of him because there's only very few fetch lands that we're playing that you might be able to bring him back twice a turn. But I mean, for 2 manas, and if every turn you can play a land, you sacrifice him off. It's not bad, So that's why I have him in there. But he could be potentially cut. Blood Artist, and I guess the other brother of Blood Artist is going to be Cutport Zulaport, or Zulaport Cutthroat. Sorry. Yeah, both they essentially kind of do the same thing. You're paying your opponent, heal yourself 1. he target hits, he hits everyone, but he only counts your creatures. Blood Arts counts everyone's creatures. So those are the trade-offs. If you have both on the board, you're in a good spot. Real cheap aristocrat effects, you know. Um, yeah. Our first creature, our cheapest creature with Undying, was going to be Butcher Ghoul. So I recommend him over as like one of the best Undying creatures because he's just one of the cheapest. Reassembling Skeleton when you need more, when you have a lot of mana, you're not doing much, or you need mana, you need something to come back, sacrifice, whatever. Yeah, for 2 mana, it's kind of expensive, but it has helped me win a few games actually. So I can't say it's like the worst card in the deck, but same thing with this one. So it's neither trader, and Resembling Skeletons kind of do the same thing. He is cheaper. The trader is cheaper by 1 colorless mana, but the condition on the trader is that you need something else to die. Um, so yeah, so it's kind of like, it's if you are able to kind of go infinite, then create infinite tokens and have like maybe infinite mana. You can kind of bring this guy back and forth a lot. Same thing with this. Well, obviously you have infinite mana. You can do both. Bring him back and forth. But he just has a condition, and Skeleton does not. So yeah. Dalfi's just a great card in Commander overall. One of the best black cards in Commander, I want to say. When you have him on the board, it makes your opponent very, very, like, they have to be very wary of what they cast and what gets sent to the grave. So like a lot of times when I have him on the board, almost like everyone just doesn't really do anything. Like they won't cast like spells that are like, they won't cast like an expropriate or something on the board. So Dalfi is a great check, for sure, and he hoses other graveyard strategies. So if other graveyard strategies, like if you're playing against like another aristocrat deck, if you have him on the board, it becomes like very hard for them to deal with, or like they had like a zombie deck or something like that. Yeah, Dalfi's really good in Commander, especially for 2 mana. Iconic Inkcore Rat is namely for Infect. You give everyone an Infect token and you proliferate them to death. I was able to kill a few people under Teferi's protection with the rat. So yeah, that's what the rat is really for, and not much to really say about him. Next off here, Weapon Craft Enthusiast, trying this guy out. He basically, if with this and Yawgmoth, he gives you 3 mana, draw 3 cards essentially, lose 3 life. That's what he's really here for. Is just to put bodies on the board and you sack them off with Yawgmoth to draw immediately. Snake Mancer chick here, pretty good. Every turn you get a snake token with Death Touch, which is kind of nice. But you try to sack this token off every time, and at the end of your opponent's turn, just to draw a card, put a -1/1 on something, and draw. So like a full rotation, you should be able to draw like 4 cards with her. So pretty good card. Not much to really say that. She's just another Rakdos effect. Just a black creature comes on board or dies. I think just on board, comes into the battlefield. Yeah, and so they lose life, you gain life. That's really it. Giraffe's Messenger. You go infinite with this guy. Another good Undying creature. 3 mana. He pings when he enters the battlefield. So just another way to go infinite, and you can kind of kill people off with either him just pinging them to death, or if you have another, like another aristocrat card, you can kind of keep that loop going. Opposition Agents, just another oppressive card. Not the best in the deck, honestly, but just another way to kind of slow your opponents down. And another stax card, I guess. So yeah, not much to really say about that. Pawn of Ulamog, just to make some more creatures when other creatures die. Kind of slow though. I kind of, the more I play the deck, the more I don't like cards that just sit there and wait for something to happen, which is why I prefer something like a weapons enthusiast, weapon craft enthusiast, because this when it resolves, it immediately puts creatures onto the board. Where like pawn, you kind of have to wait for something else to die. It doesn't see token deaths, so if your token dies, it doesn't generate more tokens. So it stuff like this, I kind of like have a hate love relationship with. Um, you know, comes to this one like this same thing with weapons craft. This guy comes into the battlefield, puts 4 bodies on the board. You can immediately get advantage and immediately do something with those 4 bodies. So that's why I like stuff like this where it immediately just makes bodies on the board, and you can just kind of take advantage of that right away. Pitless Bundler, a way to get infinite mana. There's a bunch of ways you can kind of recycle stuff and get infinite mana off of this guy. Make a bunch of infinite treasure tokens. Unless your opponent has Karn or something like that, you're always going to be able to kind of go off with him. Another way to make more zombies, a bit of life healing built in, hoses, other strategies. Yeah, I mean, I like it. A lot of time when I have him on the board, my opponent's playing like zombies or something like that, or some sort of creature-based deck, and when it dies, just you're making a zombie yourself now, and you're be able to sacrifice that off of Yawgmoth, is kind of nice there. CDC just for the tutoring, you can bring her back, stuff like that. Gary here, just to burn and heal. This guy's pretty good. He is pretty expensive though at 5 mana, but if you're able to get him out a little bit early on the board, and you're casting creatures, you can kill those thralls off with the Yawgmoth and keep making more and more creatures a turn. There's a good potential for you to go like create a ton of creatures with this guy, and so yeah, I definitely like him. If you just be careful if you cast something like 7 mana, he makes 7 thralls and just kind of dies. But we only have like 2 things in this entire deck that costs 7 mana in terms of creatures, so he almost never dies. You can almost always kill off the thralls before he hits that 7 mark. If you have him and the Planeswalker, this guy, they do both make thralls, so just be careful. So Tavesh here might kill Endrick if you're not careful. So yeah, just be careful of that. Coke Show to make some health and to ping our opponents. If you can bring him back and forth, you can go infinite with this guy. Macias, real good card in this deck just for for the +1 counter, sacrificing and persisting, stuff like that. We do run quite a bit of humans in the deck, so just keep in mind that Macias will not be able to bring back Yawgmoth if Yawgmoth dies, because Yawgmoth is a human, and there's a couple other creatures in there, so just keep that in mind when you have Macias out on the board. I did take out the Walking Ballista, because I don't. The more games I played, the more games I kill other people other ways rather than going for the Ballista Macias, combo. So I ended up just taking out the Walking Ballista, and I think I threw something else in, but yeah. Yawgmoth and Razakaf. If you get him out early on the board and you have a lot of life, you can turn your entire deck into like a turbo deck, which is kind of great. So yeah, it's basically for 4 mana, 6 life, you can turn your entire deck into like a Phyrexian deck. So that's pretty good there. He will drain your life really quickly, so just be careful. And then Razakaf, basically we have so many creatures that if we're not sacrificing with Yawgmoth, we can sacrifice with Razakaf, and then basically tutor out any combo we want, and then just kill our opponent that way. You want to combo out. Or you want to tutor out combo pieces or removal pieces, just whatever you like. And that's it. Don't really need much else for the creatures. I think that's 27 creatures in total. For instances, we run only 2, Dark Ritual and Vampiric Tutor. Yeah, just both good 1 mana stuff to kind of help you there. And then for sorceries, let me take them out. Got Reanimate, just efficient revival, reanimation, Feed the Swarm to kill any pesky enchantments that we might want to get rid of. Sometimes we run into enchantments where like it turns Yawgmoth into like a forest or something like that. You want to get rid of that, or you want to get rid of like Rest in Peace, stuff like that. I mean, black has very few enchantment removal, and so feed the swarm is probably the best one, honestly. And so yeah, that's just one way to get rid of enchantments. I mean, sometimes you kill creatures with it, but mostly you want to save it for enchantments. Diabolic Intent and Demonic Tutors, they're both tutors, the best efficient ones. So I play both of them. Um, and then for draw cards, we got Sign in Blood and um, Knight's Whisper. So this is the cool Dracula looking one. So yeah, you got cool art there. Toxic Deluge as a board wipe, and Victimize as another reanimator. I also picked up this card, Yawgmoth's Will. Um, Yawgmoth's Will is not necessary in the deck at all. I just wanted to kind of make Yawgmoth tribal, so um, found a pretty good price for one of the wills, and I was able to pick one up. Um, Namely, it's here for late game, or if you have a lot of mana and your graveyard is like filled with stuff, then for sure you can get a lot of value off of Yawgmoth's Will. Just be careful. One game I forgot that when something dies or gets sent to the graveyard that turn, it gets exiled instead. So that's just one cause. I guess that's the biggest con about Yawgmoth's Will. But other than that, I mean, you can play lands from your grave. You can play creatures, spells, whatever you want, whatever you need when you cast Yawgmoth's Will. Definitely a late game card. Drawing it early game, it's not gonna really probably do you too much. Or if your graveyard's gone, then yeah, kind of sucks there. And the last Living Death board wipe revival. Yeah, just another efficient card there. We do play quite a bit of enchantments, and I think they're mostly the same from last time. Blood Chief's Ascension, just a good 1 mana way to kind of punish your opponent, gain you some health. You don't really have the ability to trigger this super quickly, but we have a bunch of pingers in the deck, so you ping your opponents once or twice the turn. You can start stacking counters on it, or if you have at least one counter on it, you can proliferate to get 2 more additional counter and have this online really quickly. So yeah, great card. I like it, and it punishes people for doing tokens and stuff like that, or like treasures. I believe. I think it's just whenever a card is put into the graveyard. Yeah. So they crack treasure tokens, they crack clues, they crack like stuff like that, lands, whatever. It just kind of forces them to pay 2 life every time they do that, and you gain 2 life. And for 1 mana, I think it's a pretty nice card. Next off, you got Meat Hook Massacre. Just another board wipe, and it's got a great enchantment effect. Yeah, overall great card. This card is pretty expensive for what it is. I missed my opportunity to pick it up for really cheap. Back when it was like 15, $17. I was like, oh, this card's gonna get cheaper, right? No one's gonna play this. Turns out I was wrong. The card jumped up to like $40, $50, $60, $70, and has been kind of like been on the moon for a long time. So I managed to pick this copy up for like $30, so it wasn't like the worst. But definitely a card that I should have picked up a lot earlier. This card I'm just trying out. It's Contamination. It's basically Blood Moon. It forces all, I guess, lands to tap for black instead. So it doesn't hurt utility lands, because if the land has an ability and they tap it, they can still use the ability. But when it taps for mana, if it tries to tap for mana, it changes that mana to black. So like if you have Maze If, you could still use the Maze If to pull something out of combat. But if it's like you have like a I don't know, like ancient like Cavern of Souls or something like that, when you tap it to try to make mana, it just makes a black instead. So yeah, I think that's, and I guess the sacrificing requirement is fairly easy in the deck. You're making a lot of creatures, and so yeah, you should be able to, in theory, to when you play this, you should be able to, in theory, to force your opponent to keep making black mana, kind of slowing the game down in your favor. You can also play this to kind of like on a turn that you think you're gonna win, just play it, and it forces all black mana. You know, so your opponent's either gonna have to float mana immediately. If they don't float mana, if they do float mana after you play contamination, you can go into battle phase or something to force them to use that mana up and then go back into your second main. Because this deck doesn't need its battle phase at all. This deck, you never want to attack with anything in this. You want to leave everything up as a blocker, and all your creatures are just really weak. They're like 1/1s or they're like 0/1s. So you're never gonna win by attacking. You're always gonna win by using the aristocrat effects, which there are a ton of in the deck. Um, and so yeah, contamination is just another way to kind of hose your opponent to yeah. The other card was Infernal Darkness. Now, Infernal Darkness does kind of the same thing, but Infernal Darkness has a cumulative upkeep, and we don't make a ton of big mana in the deck. Like, if I had Keurig or Kirk on the board, then you might be able to pay for it every turn. But it does get painful since it's cumulative, so you're like, you're adding one black, two black, four black, so on and so forth. Um, or contamination sacrificing a creature is a lot easier, and you can choose to turn off whenever you need to if you don't want to sacrifice more creatures. You make you're a mono black deck, so like this card doesn't hurt you at all. Bastion of Remembrance, in a good aristocrat deck or aristocrat effect, gives you a body, at least one body on the board when you play it. Um, Now this card is I haven't played with this card. I just got this card in the mail actually. It's called Black Market Connections, and this is like the new Phyrexian Arena. I don't play Phyrexian Arena anymore in the deck because you don't really need to because you pay 3 mana. It's pretty slow. Like it doesn't do anything at all. Maybe in decks where you just don't have any other options to draw, then Phyrexian Arena is good. But in the Yawgmoth deck like us, our commander is a Phyrexian Arena, so we don't really need it. It's pretty slow. So, but Black Market is nice in the sense that it can ramp you, or it can be a Phyrexian Arena, or it can be like whatever you want it to be. You can choose all 3 modes to do, and that would cost I think a total of 6 life. So it does get kind of expensive, but there's at a certain point if you have a lot of life in the game, um, you can just like constantly pump this thing out, and it's gonna get a bunch of value. I don't know how broken it is or how good it's gonna be, but this card I think is gonna replace Phyrexian Arena in most decks. Um, I don't know. It's just crazy value for what it does. So yeah, but that's one card there. Um, an enchantment here. So these two enchantments kind of do the same thing. This one, when something dies, makes a pest token. Those pests heals you, so it's kind of nice there. Nest of Scarabs is one of the most important enchantments in the deck. Allows you to go infinite pretty easily with this with Yawgmoth on the board, or get pretty close to infinite. So yeah, Nest of Scarab is I think it's one of the best enchantments for the deck. So highly recommend that card. Necropotence. So Necropotence is similar to Yawgmoth. Sometimes if you just don't have the ability to cast Yawgmoth, or you have all life, or you have like a Requiem Tower or something on the board, and you just want to draw a lot. And yeah, Necropotence are cards that just draw like 20 or 30 on demand. So yeah, great card. It's got a weird cause where if you discard something, it gets exiled. So just be careful of that. But otherwise, I mean, it's great. It's like a very powerful black draw card. Last two are just going to be the Dictate of Erebos and Grave Pack. Just another way to force our opponents to keep the board clear. So you can have one of these on the board or have both of them. This is basically our instant speed interaction because you can just trigger Yawgmoth or trigger a sacrifice, and this will just stack on top of each other and kind of just force them to sacrifice and keep the board clear, which is kind of nice. Yeah. Next off, I think we're just gonna go for the artifacts in the deck, and go from there. So I got a mana crypt here. Yeah, fast mana. I do kill myself with this card quite a bit, so just be careful with it when you decide to play it. If you really need to get rid of it, you can just Karn this yourself and kill it off. So, but yeah, it's like Soul Ring basically, Soul Ring on crack. Um, but yeah, if you get this out early game, you can get ahead of your opponents really quickly. Not much to say about that. Crow Mox, same idea. Everflowing Chalice, great card. You usually want to do Kicker for 2. Um, Sometimes you can play it on 0, and then just eventually. Um, I don't know if you can add in a counter when you play this on 0, but um, yeah, I don't think so. I don't think you can add a counter once this thing is already. Yeah, if there's no counter on this, you can't really do anything. But I guess if you play it on 0, if you have like, maybe you have Aether Gust Reserve, like Aether Flux Reserve or something like that, and you just need a heal, you can play this on 0. But I usually just play this on multi-kicker 1, just get 1 counter on it. And then if I do get a chance to proliferate with Yawgmoth, I'll bump up the counters on this. So yeah, Jewel Lotus, just another fast mana to bring out Yawgmoth. You got the Soul Ring, you got the Mana Vault. Mana Vault is probably the worst one out of the colorless ramps. But I have one, so I'll play one. So there you go. Skull Clamp to draw cards. We make a bunch of 1/1s, bunch of 0/1s. Turn them into into Paw of Greed is a very good good ability. Sensei is not super important, but it's here to potentially go infinite with the Bull Citadel. So just another win con there. Go infinite with this treasure or this creature maker real easily. But you gotta be careful too, because your opponent can also do the same thing. They can also make infinite mirror tokens. But usually, if you get this in Undying and you're sacrificing the Undying creature, you can essentially kind of go infinite with this thing. Just another ramp here. Jet Medallion, another ramp. Monument, ramp and Aristocrat effect there. Phyrexian Altar, you can go infinite with a couple cards in the deck. Another great card there. And then Flux to heal, and Flux is usually here for the bolus plus the top Sensei's top combo. So if you don't know what this does, if you have both on board, you play them, and you basically can tap this. If it's a land, you come across a land, tap it, draw your land, put this on top, play it again, and you keep casting this thing for like 1 life. But the flux, the Flux Reservoir, every time you cast a spell during that turn, you gain more and more life each time. So there's a potential for you to gain like easily 50 life and more, maybe 100 life, and you can use the second ability of Aether Flux to basically pay 50 life to deal 50 damage. That will usually allow you to one-shot someone. So yeah, really easy to go infinite with these 3 cards here. And last, go through the lands real quickly. Got Caverns of Souls just so I can stop people from countering my commander. I almost always call humans, because majority of the monsters are going to be either humans, sometimes zombies, and sometimes demons, but it's mostly going to be humans. We're a mono black deck, so Nykthos is good. Karns to proliferate when we need to, if we don't have our commander, or we have like extra mana we're not doing anything with. Proliferating the -1/1 token counters, proliferating our own counters, stuff like that. Ancient Tomb, just another fast mana there. Blast Zone to get rid of pesky enchantments that we can't deal with, or even artifacts that we can't deal with normally. Blast Zone's a great way to deal with that. You can also proliferate Blast Zone with with Karns, or you can proliferate it with Yawgmoth if you don't want to spend a ton of mana adding counters to it. You can just spend 2 mana to add a counter to it, then pop it. Yeah, so just another way to deal with enchantments and stuff like that. Wreck Tower, because we do draw a ton, so occasionally if you want no hand size limit, it's great to have. Sometimes people play Jin Taxius, another great counter to Jin Taxius, because you get to keep your hand limit there. Homeward, in case people steal our creatures, there's a bunch of stuff that expropriate and stuff like that. go around. If they steal your commander, you're kind of screwed. So this is just one way to get it back. Urza Saga is just another good card, great in modern. In commander, you usually fetch like a soul ring, or you fetch like a skull clamp, or you fetch like maybe a Sensei's top or something like that. Whatever you need. We have a bunch of 0 mana, 1 mana artifacts. So whatever you need, you can kind of fetch with the Urzas here. This card is great. I love this card. Being that it could be played as a land, but most of the time, if like I don't need it as a land, I just use its instance, and I can save like a lot of my creatures from dying, which is kind of great. Um, a reanimator spell, you don't really get to use it that often, but I usually use it as a land. But sometimes when late in the game you have nothing else to do and you have a bunch of mana, use this to revive some stuff. So yeah, and this is Phyrexian Tower with the Dracula art. Just another way to sacrifice stuff and and I guess ramp up a little bit. Yeah. The Kamigawa land. You cycle it, you mill I think 3 and add 1 back. Just a utility land essentially. Urborg Cabal Coffers, the classic combo, make a bunch of mana. We have a bunch of swamps. You can fetch this out with our 4, well, I guess 3 fetch lands. So this will only fetch for a swamp. These will fetch for any swamp types. So you can fetch this, and you use namely the fetch lands to kind of get back blood gasp. Um, I think that's really it, honestly. So like what 4 fetch lands here? Basically just swamps, but yeah, you can fetch. They're fetchable now, and I think I have like 12 or 13 basic swamps there to go along with everything else. You could probably play more swamps, but I like to have my lands open up to utility. I guess if you wanted to do more swamps, cards that you might be able to cut out with maybe like Homeward, Wreck Tower, Blast Zone, and Karn, I guess. Those are like the 4 flexible utility lands that you don't need. Sometimes I do run into color problems where I just draw too many utility lands and not have enough black to cast some stuff. So if you want to cut some of this out and add more black, or add more basic swamps, then these would probably be the cards I would potentially cut. Or if you're not playing Bloodghast, you can just cut these out and just play more swamps. You don't really need to fetch. I think this card's good. I think that's good. Yeah, I think else in here is pretty solid. But these are some of the lands that are just flexible lands you can put in and play whatever you like. But yeah, I've used all of these before. The ones I probably don't use too often is Karn, but I have used Tower quite a bit to when I have a huge hand, or Homeward I've used quite a bit. The other 2, I guess you can do like Arcane Lighthouse, maybe Maze of If, stuff like that. So those are some other utility lands you can try out. I think this is a pretty good range of utility lands, if I say so myself. And yeah, so I think that's really it. I've been playing, and I guess it's been doing pretty well for me. And that's really it. That's only, I think that's the only updates I got there for this particular deck. But yeah, it's fun. It plays very similar to like the Yawgmoth combo deck in modern. Well, in the sense that like you're aristocrating and you're pinging and drawing cards, and if you like that sort of like interaction, you like kind of planning your stack, because using the stack is very important in this deck. So just kind of knowing how the stack works is and kind of abusing the stack. That's how this is how the deck kind of operates. So all the interactions do a bunch of triggering abilities and stuff like that. So you don't really have room to really play a whole ton of like instant speed removal. There's a few cards you can play. You can play like Deadly Rollick. You can play Imps Mischief. Those are probably some of the instant speed interaction I would probably play. But everything else, I think we're just gonna try to abuse with Yawgmoth and use him as kind of like our interaction with our opponent's board. Um, and we have a couple of stax cards to kind of slow down the game, let us control the game, and we got a couple of cards that we can get rid of some permanents, uh, and basically try to kill our opponent uh, through life loss. If they gain infinite life a turn, they being magic, you have to declare a certain amount. So you can always beat an infinite life deck. So it doesn't matter because you go infinite damage, +1 or plus whatever you like. And so the only deck you probably have to worry about is like Thassa's Oracle and stuff like that, because we don't have like counter spells and you know, or if they play a very aggro deck like their commander's attacking, making a bunch of tokens, or their commander makes like doubles attacks or something like that, then you might have to be careful with. But outside of that, your Yawgmoth is well positioned to uh, just um, just to kind of control the board, and have you be arch enemy fairly quickly, and you would have a bunch of cards in your hands too. So yeah, so you got plenty of ways to kind of kill the table pretty quickly, just through aristocrat damage. And most of the time people aren't attacking you because you have a bunch of tokens on the board. The fair weakness is that people are gonna probably gang up on you a lot. So like most of the time they'll try to remove like a enchantment, to blow up your enchantments, to try to get rid of your Yawgmoth, stuff like that. Um, so you can play a little bit more passive and just sit there, play a couple cards here and there, and wait until you feel like everyone's kind of running out of resources, or they're like more busy with dealing with each other. Then you can finally drop Yawgmoth and the rest of your combo pieces and combo off from there, and kill the table. But yeah, so just be careful if you do play it, because the way I have this deck set up, I have a bunch of ramps, so I can start being a threat really early in the game, and then the whole table will start swinging at me, or the whole table will start using their interaction against my permanents, and so just be careful of that. So, but that's the way I like to play. I just like to be an arch enemy, or be a threat almost that you kind of to deal with immediately, or just a value engine. You're drawing a lot of cards, you're getting a lot of value off of your sacrificing your creatures, and Yawgmoth's ability is very hard to interact with. Um, you can always stack stuff on top of the stack if they're trying to remove Yawgmoth, which is what I like. And so, yeah, I think that's really it. I think this video's gone on for quite a while, and I hope you guys enjoy, and we'll see you guys next time.